Hey guys, welcome to this Monday's Paint Along. I am Allie and I do these fun free demos every Monday at 5 Eastern, and I am so glad that you are here today watching this live and joining me for this demo. So we've been doing this new series that we started last week, which is going to be all farm animals. I thought this would just be kind of a fun little exercise in trying some of these little cute farm animal portraits. So last week we painted a cow, and so many of you painted with me, and you guys did amazing. I loved seeing all the cute cow pictures that came in. And hi Minetta, thanks for jumping in. Yeah, as you guys are joining the demo here, please jump in and say hi in the comments. And it's always fun to see where you are watching from. Other people like to see that too, so love it if you would also put that in there. Yeah, so last week was a cow. This week we are painting a chicken. And this came from a friend of mine on here who submitted a portrait of her, a photo of one of her chickens. This is Princess Leia. So I love that photo, and I did a little editing to it before we got started. So we're going to paint from this one. Now, if you would like to paint this with me, many of you already have your outlines download, but if you're new here, if you don't know how this all works, I put out a download that you can purchase for $10, and it's a traceable template, so you can get your outlines on your panel. I also put together a paint list. So that link will be in the comments, but you can also just find it on my website, Allie K Studio. And this demo will be available as a replay immediately after tonight's live demo. So feel free to always come back to it, try painting this a few times, but I love it when you guys paint with me live because it's pretty amazing to see all the chicken paintings that are gonna come out of this in 1 hour. So a lot of times I think we are intimidated by getting a painting done, and it's like, just do it in an hour and then it's over and it's done. So hi Amy and Nilda and everyone else who is jumping in here. Lindsay, we've got people all over the place. Thank you all for saying hi. And I'm excited to start painting. So let's start working on Princess Leia here. Hi Adrian, right here in Chattanooga where I am. Love seeing all the work you're posting. Yeah, hi Judy. All right, and Jennifer in Canada, awesome. Okay, so last week I tried something new where I was doing this horizontal format because that way we can see the painting a little bigger, but it was brought up that you guys really like seeing my palette. So I'm going to try having my camera a little bit further away so that you can both see my painting and my palette, so you can kind of see how I'm mixing colors. So we're gonna give that a try this week. And I appreciate getting your feedback. I wanna know what's working for you guys in these demos and what I could do better so that we can make them better all the time. Hi Elena, can't wait to see what you paint. I know you're gonna be painting. All right, so I transferred these outlines, then I painted over them with a skinny little script liner brush, and I made just kind of a light grayish purple. And I made that using Payne's Gray, alizarin crimson, and titanium white. And I forgot to mention this. I always try to remember we're using golden fluid acrylics for this demo. Those are my paints of choice, but if that's not what you have on hand, just use what you've got. I do have a paint list of paints that I recommend purchasing from Golden. You can find that on my site because I only use like maybe 8 colors that I buy over and over again. But this is what I'm using for the demo. But again, feel free to use what you have because you can still use my techniques and make it work. All right, so here we go. Let's get the camera adjusted so that you can see my painting and my reference image, and then I'm gonna try to tilt it down so you can also see my palette. So we'll give that a try. We'll angle it down. Okay. All right, hopefully that is going to work. All right, you guys can see the painting and Princess Leia. here on my iPad, and we'll get started. All right, so first thing I always do after I get my outlines on is I start finding shadows. So I'm going to make a gray using Payne's Gray and alizarin crimson. I need to get myself some alizarin crimson here. And this just makes kind of a nice dark gray. We might need to tilt this down a little bit more so you can see my palette a little bit better. Let's try that. You guys see my palette pretty well? I'm seeing your comments, so I'm not seeing every little bit, but I'm trying to hold my palette high so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so this is about equal parts Payne's Gray and alizarin crimson. This first tone does not really matter. I'm just looking for shadows. So we're just kind of painting this as like a grayscale painting, looking for the areas that are darker. And I've added quite a bit of water to my puddle, trying to look, oh, there you can see my palette better. I'm just gonna try to keep it like right below my painting here. That seems to work. Okay, so starting out, let's look at our shadows. So we've got kind of a dark edge along the edge of the chicken. And I'm using a #1 square tipped brush right now. I'm not picky about brush brands. I just like to have a brush that's shaped up pretty nice. Try to take pretty good care of my brushes, and then I throw them away when they're not good anymore. And let me know if you guys have any questions as I'm going. I always try to keep looking back here to see the comment feed. I do have a little bit of a delay, so I don't see your question immediately, but I try to answer as soon as I see it. Hi, Verana. Thanks for joining me. So again, this is just alizarin crimson and Payne's Gray, and I'm just looking for the shadows. I'm just comparing shapes so I can see it's dark here, and then it gets brighter here, so I'm painting around it. And then on the other side, it's gonna be dark again. So I'm just comparing each side of my line and picking which side is going to be the darker side, and I'm just washing that in. And again, I'm just using water to thin my paints right now. That way they'll dry quickly and we can just keep layering over them. Hi, Gina. Glad you are here for the live. Welcome. Amy's asking, can you use oils? Yes, Amy, you can. I don't paint a lot in oils. When I used to do more work in oils and I did this similar process, I would still do my underpainting in acrylic so that it would dry, and then I would just put oils on top. But if oils are all you have, then I would just say have your underpainting dry for a day or so that your colors aren't going to be mushing together, because you really want to have that underpainting be dry before you layer anything else on top of it. But yeah, you can still definitely use this process in oil. You just need to probably wait between the layers. In fact, I have several people that have done my demos in oil, and it's always kind of fun to see how those turn out, because they definitely have a different effect. And I have nothing against oil paint. I love oils. I just, I like to work so fast that it's hard for me to use them. Hi, Nancy. Got people all over the place tonight. I love it. Okay, so just gonna continue working my way around, looking for these shadows. And we've got a dark, I'm actually gonna put that dark spot in the eye in a little bit darker, so I'm gonna add a little more paint to my mixture to get that nice and dark, because I don't wanna lose that. I wanna see where that's nice and dark. That'll just help me as I go along here. Okay. And I'm not painting around all these little lines. Some of these little texture lines I'm just kind of ignoring for right now, and since my paint is very thin, I can see right through, and so I'll use those later when I'm adding more depth to my shading here. But I'm not necessarily painting in every little line. Okay. A little bit of shading there. And I have my paint really thin, but as I'm working, I'm kind of offloading my brush. So I'm kind of scraping it against the edge of my palette. I think you guys can see that. And that keeps, that controls how much paint and how much water are on my brush so that I can have my paint really thin, but it's not like dripping down the canvas. So I just kind of scrape it on the edge. That's one reason I like this palette. This palette's from Hobby Lobby. It's just a plain old simple white plastic palette, but I like that it's got these kind of hard edges on it. Another thing I like about it is I can let my paint dry on the palette. I don't have to clean it, and then I just peel it off when it's all gobbed up. So I'm sorry that my palette is messy, but my palettes are actually never really clean. So it's just how it is. Sorry about that. All right, now I don't want to get too detailed in this texture down here. I don't want to get carried away with all that. So I'm actually just going to, I think, switch to a slightly larger brush, and I'm just going to do a bit of a dark wash down there because I don't need to get all carried away with all those little feathers for right now. So I'm going to go a little bit bigger. Let's see what I've got here. Yeah, this is a number 4, I guess, but I just need something a little bit bigger so that I can just kind of wash this in a little bit there. So I'm ignoring a lot of those texture little lines that I put in because those are not necessary. So the darkest part of the body down here is kind of in the center, and then it gets a little bit lighter. So I'm not going to put this wash in everywhere. I'm just putting it in where it's the darkest. And you'll see why. So on this edge, it gets lighter here, and then the dark background is separating it. You see how I did that? It switches where here I've got it dark, and then it's going to get lighter. So I'm just going to leave that be, and then I'm going to pick it up dark in the background. And just gonna kind of loosely do that. Now I'm going to have my dark edge be, whoops, got a little messy there. I'm gonna make this a little bit dark here, and I'm gonna have my background be light behind this chicken here. Okay, I think that's probably enough of this first wash of color. And just looking to see how our lighting works on here. Sometimes I've got a bit of a glare, and I don't want you guys to see things incorrectly because of the glare. Let's just adjust that a pinch, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, we might need to adjust that a little bit more later, but we're gonna keep moving. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and I'm going to push my darkest areas a little bit darker. So I'm going to use the same 2-color recipe, only now I'm gonna go without all that water. So it's just gonna be the alizarin crimson and Payne's gray. And okay, Judy, you say the lighting looks good. Thank you. It's so hard for me to tell when I'm like looking at the screen here. It's so small, but I'm glad that you guys can give me a little update there. Okay. So now I'm looking for the very darkest areas. So again, I'm gonna go back into that black dot in the eye because that's really dark. It looks almost completely black, but I never paint anything actually black because black is boring. So that's pretty dark. Then we've got a pretty dark shape right here by the beak. I'm gonna push that in a little darker, and it gets dark right here. So I'm just building up these layers. And just one tip that I like to give over and over again is don't be afraid to make your dark areas really dark and your light areas really light, because having that contrast is what's going to give your painting depth. So I always kind of overemphasize that a little bit in my paintings, and I think that is what makes them feel three-dimensional. All right, so those are very darkest areas around here. Just kind of peeking around, seeing if I missed anything. It's pretty dark around the eye right there too. Okay, that feels pretty good up there. Now I'm just gonna put a little bit of texture in here. And one thing I'll say with animals is when you've got like all these random feathers and texture, you don't need to try to place them in the exact places that you're seeing each feather, because you will drive yourself crazy, and it's just not necessary. So just kind of think about the general shapes of the texture and making your shapes similar, but don't try to put them in the exact same places. And then also don't make them all like exactly the same shape. Our brain has a tendency to want to do that. If we see like this swoop of the feather, we want to start making them all the same, and that's not the way that they are. So it's more natural just to let them be kind of irregular. Nobody's going to start counting feathers here on Princess Leia and bust us if we're doing them a little bit differently than the reference image. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. Now I ideally want all of this to be dry before I put in my complementary color wash. But the areas I just painted in are not completely dry yet. So I think I'm gonna do my wash in the background because I'm not gonna do any shading back here. I don't really have a whole lot going on, so I don't really need to do any underpainting shading. So I'm just going to pick my underpainting color. So I always get a lot of questions about what to pick for an underpainting color, and I like to do a complementary color underpainting. So that means like opposite on the color wheel. So if my top layer is going to be cool, like a green or a blue, then I'll pick a really warm underpainting. But I don't always do the true opposite. I'm looking here at the comments. Crystal says, I love your big palette. Where do I look for one? Oh, this is from Hobby Lobby. It's probably not that big, but it just looks big on the camera. But yeah, it's like a $5 palette from Hobby Lobby, and you can order it online. Okay, so for my background, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do quinacridone magenta, because I see this magenta color in the chicken, and so putting that as a base for my background, actually I already have some on my palette, is going to be really fun because I like to tie the foreground into the background. So quinacridone magenta is one of my favorite colors from Golden, and it's really hard to mix it. You just have to buy it. Now my background is a little bit darker on this side than over here, so I'm going to put my underpainting in a little bit darker, and I'm just thinning with water. Can you guys see my magenta? I love this color. And it's gonna be so fun when we layer that mint color on top of it. And then when we see little bits of it on the actual chicken kind of dancing around, that's gonna be fun. Chicken dancing. All right, imagine that. Chicken dancing will be fun. All right, so you see how I switched to a bigger brush just to kind of wash this in quickly. And I love this color. All right, now as it's gonna get lighter over here, I'm gonna add more water to it to thin it out a little bit more. And just keep going. So I'm moving pretty quick so that I don't get runs. And if you start to get some runs, you can always just kind of go back and catch them. But this is the underpainting, so we're gonna be layering on top of this, so it's really not gonna matter too much if you get some drips in there. All right, so there's our background color. And now we're going to, oh, I've got this little bit down here, which is kind of a gray. I'm just gonna keep going with the same background color. I'm gonna darken it up a little bit because that's darker, but I'm just gonna put that quinacridone magenta right there. Okay, perfect. All right. Now we're gonna pick what color the chicken's going to be. I keep wanting to say rooster. I thought it was a rooster at first as a chicken. I was corrected. So it's a chicken. So I'm gonna do, I think these areas that are red, I'm going to do green. I'm gonna flip it and I'm going to do phthalo green blue shade, which is a very intense green. You just need a tiny little drop of it. And I'll wash that in. And I hardly have any of this on my brush because it's such a strong color. And then we'll do all those red areas with this phthalo green. If you are new here and you're wondering what in the world is going on because I'm painting all these crazy colors, trust me, there will be a reason for it. Part of it is that when we layer the opposite colors on top, they look more vibrant when they are layered over their opposite. And then another part of it is that it's just fun and I like to. So there you go. All right, we're gonna do green in all these areas that look pretty red. And then I think the rest of it, I'm going to do purple because the rest of it's kind of like orangey brown tones and like yellow. And so the opposite for that would be purple. And I like permanent violet dark. But I've heard that that is hard to get these days. This is the color, permanent violet dark. I don't know if you guys can see. There we go. My light might have been too bright on that. So, and if you can't get this color, you could also use that quinacridone magenta and just add a little drop of blue to it, either phthalo blue or ultramarine blue, and that will make more of that purple tone. But since I have a big bottle of permanent violet dark, I'm going to use it. So I'm just gonna wash this right over everything. And I use this color a lot as an underpainting. It's one of my favorites. I use it under skin tones pretty often because like browns and tans and peach colors just all look really good on top of this color. So you'll see, we'll start doing that pretty soon when we're done with our underpainting, and it's almost done. I actually have 2 of these palettes going right now, so that's another little tip, is use 2 palettes because I don't like to be hindered by not having enough room to mix. I like to work quickly, so I always have 2 of these going. Hopefully you guys can still see what I'm mixing here. Maybe you can't. Sorry, we're gonna tip this a little bit more maybe so you can see more of my palette. All right. Hopefully that helps. I don't know. Okay. It's just permanent violet dark that I'm using, but I know you guys like seeing me mix it. Okay, so we need this to dry before we layer over it. Since it's not quite dry yet, I'm gonna just blot up some of this background that's still a little wet, and then we'll be ready to layer into the background and get some of that in there right away. Okay, so yeah, I think the background is dry enough to layer on, so that's where we're going to start. So this is all what I would consider the underpainting. So now we're going to start doing the overpainting. And I wish I could show you guys more of my palette. I'm just gonna keep backing this up a little bit. Hopefully that's better. Another thing is sometimes these live videos get cropped a little more than I would like than what I see, but I think we're good. Okay, so this is kind of like a minty color in the background that's darker up here and gets lighter down here. So I think we'll start with the light part because this is drier. So I'm going to put that in using phthalo blue, phthalo green, and white. My two phthalos are both super strong colors, but I like to mix them together and it makes a really nice teal. And I'm also going to add a little bit of glaze to thin my paint. So once I'm done with my underpainting wash, which I only thin with water, then I start using glaze. And I'm using Liquitex Matte Medium, but I'm not picky about glaze. I just don't like something that's super shiny. So I'm gonna thin my paint a little bit with that. Add a little more white. Good, you guys can see my palette. Okay, so I've got this pretty good sized brush and I'm going to start, oop, that's too dark. See, sometimes I don't know until I get it on there, but I want it to be lighter. So I'm gonna add more white to it. And we'll try that again. Okay, I want it to be a little bit lighter. Yes, so I want to make sure that I leave some little bits, actually a lot of bits of this pink showing. We can always cover up more later. So I'm especially kind of around the chicken, I like to be intentional about leaving kind of some little windows of that peeking through. But you don't want it to be like a perfect pink outline around the subject because that just looks kind of weird. So we can always cover up more later, like I said, but you see how I'm just like laying these brush strokes down pretty quick. If you're timid about it and you slowly put them down, that will be represented in the way the brush stroke works. I feel like you guys are getting a glare. I'm gonna adjust my lighting just a pinch here because I feel like this color that I put down, it looks totally white on here and it's not. So we're gonna just try that. I want you to see the right color. I don't know if that's making it any better. It's difficult these days with the changing light. It gets so dark in here so quickly. All right. Well, we'll go for it. Okay, so maybe that helped a little. Is that Elena says it's better. Okay, yeah, I think you can kind of see the color because to me, this is looking way more teal than what it looks like on the camera. On the camera, it looks all white. We don't want that. Okay, so as I'm working my way to the left side, I'm going to add more of the phthalo green and phthalo blue to it to make it a little bit darker. So it's phthalo green, phthalo blue, and white, and I've got some glaze in there. And I'm offloading my brush to control how much is on there. And just gonna lightly drop these brush strokes in. That's maybe a little too dark. I'm gonna put a little more white back in. Adrian says less glare. Show the palette. Okay, it's funny. I'm like holding the palette up so high, but it's hard to give you guys a view of everything. Here, there we go. I had it kind of weirdly positioned. If I keep the palette here, I think you guys can see. Okay. I'm seeing a mirror image on the screen of what I'm doing, so I'm having to like really think about if I move right, it moves left. It's weird, but I'm figuring it out. Okay. So just working my way around. I love this teal on top of this magenta. So much fun. Okay, add a little more glaze to thin it out over here. I really like that magenta. I don't want to take away too much of it. Ooh, I went over a little too much there. Okay, I'm gonna stop with that. And I think now we can start working on the actual chicken. So we've got the background pretty much in, starting to come to life. Okay, so why don't we, let's start with the beak. So I'm going to make kind of a dirty gold color, and I will make that using Hansa Yellow, Pyrrole Red Light, Burnt Umber, and White. That's my same 4-color recipe that I use to make skin tones, and you'll find I use that recipe for a lot of things. So I've got some Burnt Umber, Hansa Yellow, Pyrrole Red. Let's see, my Pyrrole Red is dried up on me. Let me get a little bit more. Pyrrole Red Light, not just plain Pyrrole Red. And some white. Add a little more yellow. The burnt umber helps to kind of tone it down because that Hansa Yellow Opaque is a really strong color. I'm also going to add a little bit of glaze in there so we can see some of that purple showing through. And I switched down to a smaller brush. Okay, so I'm going to just start finding the shape of the beak. And the beak will get some additional highlights on it, but I'm just kind of getting the general color of it. And as I'm moving along, I'm kind of chipping away at my outlines because I don't really want to have those showing in the end, but I also don't want to lose all that purple because I like having some of that purple show through. So that feels pretty good for right now. We got a little highlight up there. Okay. So I see some of this color on the eye, and so while I've got it on my brush, I'm just going to put a little dab of this on the eye where I see a little highlight. Okay. And now I also see some of this tone kind of in the back here, kind of like the butt of the chicken that's kind of showing back here. So I'm just going to drop a few little bits of that along the tail here. So whenever I mix up a color, I just kind of keep looking around to see where else I can put some of that color, so I don't have to mix it again, and it just helps me to keep moving and just create some unity within my painting. So I'm just dropping this color in all the other little places that I see it. I see a little bit of it along the edge here because this is kind of a highlight along the edge. Starting to give some little indication of those feathers. And I'm letting that purple work for me like as a shadow. All right, I think that maybe is enough of that color for right now. So now let's add a little bit of white to it to lighten it up, and we're just going to add some little highlights on the beak. So I'm going to add a little more white to that same mixture. And again, that was Hansa Yellow, Pyrrole Red Light, Burnt Umber Light, and white. Let me know if you guys have any questions about what we're doing here, or just let me know how you feel about it. I'd love to know if you're painting with me. If you're working on Princess Leia with me right now, give a shout out in the comments. I'm sure you're probably like frantically painting along, but take a minute and let us know that you're working on it because I love seeing that. And I know sometimes a lot of you will do one painting live on the paint along with me, and it's always kind of fast paced, but then you'll go back later and do it again a little bit slower pace, and that's awesome. I think we learn so much by doing the same painting more than once. Oops, got the beak a little bit big there, but it's good. Let's see, Jennifer and Dawn, awesome, love to see it. And Gretchen, yes, so happy to see you guys painting with me. Okay, so I've got this highlight color and I'm continuing to drop some of this onto the body. Got some highlights here and back there. Okay, let's see. Let's keep moving. Okay, so let's put in our magenta red colors here because I think that's really gonna start to make it take shape. So let's make that red using the quinacridone magenta, and we'll use a little bit of pyrrole to make it a little bit more red in there, pyrrole red light. We're gonna add those two together and just a little pinch of white. That's gonna make this a little bit more opaque. And we'll start putting some of these bright red tones in. We're gonna have to build up our reds a little bit because it's going to seem a little bit on the dull side since we're layering it over the green, but it'll get there. Leave a few little dances of green there, otherwise we'll just have lost that fun tone. Sorry, keep trying to go back and have it so you can see the palette. I need to build a shelf. That's what I need to do so that my palette just sits right here for these demos. That would be ideal. Maybe I'll have that next time. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna do most of this because we'll add some highlights to this later and give this a little more depth. So I'm just gonna mostly paint all this in, I think. Yeah, see, all of a sudden it's starting to look like a chicken. Okay. Getting there. Again, this mixture is just, it's quinacridone magenta, pyrrole red light, and some white. That's what we've got here. All right. Okay, I want to let this dry for a minute before I come back. I missed a little bit around the beak. Before I come back and add some highlights, because if I add highlights now, it's too wet and they won't stand out. So we're going to let that sit up for a minute. And I'm going to go in and put a little detail around the eye area here. So we did our one little highlight on the eye, but now I want to actually put in the rest of that kind of orangey color that goes around the center. So I'm going to switch down to a smaller brush, and you could use like a 1. I actually have this new one that I just got that's pretty teeny tiny. I don't even know what size that is, but I'm going to try this. I usually don't work that small, but let's make our bright orange using Hansa Yellow Opaque and some Pyrrole Red Light. I'm going to try just doing those two colors to start out with and put a dash of that in. That's going to be a real bright orange. But I think since we're layering it over the green, that's going to dull it down a little bit. So let's give that a try. Yeah, that's working. Okay. And again, I'll probably have to let that dry for a minute before I add any more highlights to it. But I'm going to do, there's kind of like a pink mauve skin around it where we've got a ring of green right now, and so we'll go in and put some of that color in. Let's see, Crystal is saying talk about brush bristles. I don't have a lot to say about brushes. I just really like a brush that keeps its shape, that is a square tip, and that is pretty new. Like, that's all I can really say. I have some that are like even from Hobby Lobby, like the Fine Touch brand. Those are okay. And I also buy Royal Langnickel's big like teacher pack of 60 of them. And it's actually only, it's like $50 for 60 brushes. And so I'll just usually buy those and throw them away as I'm done with them. Okay, so going back to this pink tone around the eye, we're going to make that using white and alizarin crimson. I think maybe just those two. Those are kind of, that'll make like a nice mauve color. So white and alizarin crimson. And I'm using my tiny little brush, and I'm gonna do that skin around the eye. Add a little more white to it, I think. This is probably hard for you guys to see, but if you are painting with me and you have your reference image, why don't you just zoom in? Actually, I'll do it on mine. So I kind of forgot to do that. That's why I like to work from my iPad, because I can zoom right in on these features when I'm doing the details, and it always helps. So yeah, now you can see what I'm talking about here. We've got this skin around the eye. Actually, I was meaning to mention that you can watch these live demos. I'm pretty sure you can watch them on your smart TV. If you download the Facebook Watch app, I think you can find all my demos there. If you search me, then you could actually watch these on a great big TV, and you could have your reference image like on your tablet or your phone right next to where you're painting. So that might be a good way to try these demos the next time that you do this if you're painting with me. So I'm still just using alizarin crimson and white. I just added a little bit more alizarin crimson to it, and I'm just kind of continuing with those detail feathers around the eye here. And I'm gonna probably move down towards around the beak too, because I'm seeing some of these same colors here. Yeah, has anybody tried the Facebook Watch app? That's how we actually watch our church service these days, because it's all virtual, and it's just nice to be able to see that on the big screen. Moving over here. Yep, just continuing with this alizarin crimson and white. I'm going to move over a little more and just continue adding some highlights here, because I'm seeing other places where I can make use of this color, adding some highlight and definition. And now my first layer of that red is starting to dry, so I'm able to layer on top of that a little bit. One thing I don't like about this brush is it's too short. I always like to hold my brush really far back, and I always tell you guys to do that too, and this one's just like silly short. I don't know why, but helps me get into some little details. Okay, zoom out a little. Put a few more little feather details here around the mouth, and then we'll move on and get some of that body in there too. I'm gonna add a little bit more white, and I'm gonna brighten up that lower lid around the eye to make that stand out a little bit more right here. Not the whole way around, just in a little spot there. All right. Okay. Keep saying that, sorry. We're going to add some brighter tones now on these reds, because we've got a real nice bright pink along here, and it's not looking so bright here, so we need to pump that up. I'm gonna go back to my slightly larger brush, and I'm going to make this bright red using the same colors I was using before, but now since we're gonna layer on top a little bit more, it's going to look brighter. So I'm using pyrrole red, magenta, and white. I need to get some more white. My white is a little contaminated, so I need to get a clean spot of white. You don't want your white to be contaminated, it'll ruin your color. All right. So I don't want to have any glaze in here right now because I just really want this to stand out. Yeah, see how now that's looking so much brighter. At least it is to me, I don't know. I think you guys can see that, how that's really emphasizing that red. And so I'm gonna do that in a few other little places here. Okay, a few other little spots that we want some brighter reds popping through. I'm still a little bit, I'm a little bit wet up here yet, so I might need to come back to this again later. But I'm just trying to get a little something in there. Okay. All right, let's put some color in the body before we get too far. Oh my, it's 5:45 already. Yep, we need to get that body in there. Okay, so I'm going to make kind of a golden brown using that same 4-color recipe, the burnt umber, Hansa yellow, pyrrole red, and white. Did I say them all? I think I did. And so this is going to be kind of like a warm caramel color, just kind of like a brown caramel, and that's what we're going to start putting these feathers in with. Okay. I don't quite know if this is right, but I'm going to drop it in and see. It feels a little bit dull, but I'm going to give it a whirl. If you want your color to be a little bit more orangey, add a little bit more of the yellow and red, because the brown and the white are what kind of cancel out and dull your color down. So the orange and the red together make it more, the yellow and the red together make it more vibrant. And it is more orange right here, so I want to get that vibrant tone in. And some of it might just be that I need to layer it up a little bit because it's on top of the purple, so we might need to just get a few little layers in before I can get the vibrancy that I'm looking for. We've got some little bright tones here. But remember, don't try to put this texture everywhere because that will kind of take away from what we're trying to do here. You don't want to have perfectly shaped feathers that all look the same all the way around. It will just look funny. And another thing is the shape of the feathers changes. So in the center here, it's kind of a nice rounded bottom, but then as it wraps around the body, you're seeing it from the side, and so they're more linear and up and down. So there's a difference to the direction of the feathers, and you want to show that, and that will give the animal volume. Drop a little bit of this up here too. Okay, now it's darker in the center here, so I don't want to put too much highlight there because this needs to get darker. So I'm going to add quite a bit more burnt umber to my mixture. It's going to be almost completely burnt umber with just a little bit of what we were using before and maybe a little bit of red. I think I need to get even more burnt umber. Burnt umber is not a very strong color, so you really need to use quite a bit of it for it to make a difference. But it is a really nice brown. I use it a lot in skin tones and animals. All right, so let's, yeah, there we go. And actually I think I want to switch to a bigger brush because I want to just get some kind of big fat brush strokes in here and not worry about doing too much detail here. I just want to fill this in and try to cover up those outlines that I put down because we don't really want those to show. Those are just kind of that roadmap. And now this we want to be all pretty dark, but I'm going to just put a little bit of highlight over that for some texture. Getting there. Put a little bit of brown up there. Put some browns over that green that's there. Okay. I'm gonna let my feathers be for a few minutes, let them set up a little, and then I may go back and do a little bit more. But I'd like to go back into the eye and just put a little more detail and a little bit more reflection in there, because I think that's really gonna give it some sparkle. So I'm gonna zoom in on my eye, and I see that the brightest area where we've got like a white reflection is the top left there. So I'm going to go in with a tiny little brush again, and I'm going to mix up a real bright yellow color. So I'm going to do it with Hansa Yellow, Opaque, looking for a clean spot on my palette. It's kind of a mess. I think this is clean. And white. I'm gonna try just those two and see how that looks. That might be too glaring. Yeah, that's gonna be too bright. I'm gonna add a little bit of Pyro Red light to it to tone that down a little bit, make it more of a peachy orange. So it's Hansa Yellow, Opaque, Pyro Red light, and white. And now I'll go in and add that little sparkle on the eye. And that'll give it a lot more life. Just sometimes that one little sparkle is what does it. Just a little bit more there. And now I want to darken, there's kind of like a orange color at the bottom there, and I want to push that a little more orange. So I'm going to go in with Pyro Red and a little bit of yellow, and maybe just those two without any white in there. And maybe that'll push my orange a little bit more orange. Yeah, that does what I was looking for. Just wanted to give a little bit more oomph to that. Okay, zoom back out again. And while I've got this bright orange on my brush, I'm gonna drop this into a few places that I think a little pop of orange will be helpful. Right there. And some little spots here where I've got it pretty orange. Yeah, I like that. I kind of wish I had a bigger brush, but I just want to put some little pops to this color. We're being playful with colors here. So this is again just the Hansa Yellow and Pyro Red. There's no white in here, and that is what's keeping it nice and bright. Put a little bit on the tail. Yeah, I like that effect. Okay, now I'm gonna add some more white to it. I'm gonna switch to a little bit bigger brush because I wanna make this highlight edge a little bit brighter. And I'm gonna add some brighter highlights to the beak. So I'm going to add white. So this is still those same colors though, Hansa Yellow, Pyro Red, white. So it's making just kind of a nice warm, bright, peachy yellow tone. And we're gonna drop that in right there. You see how that's really making the edge of the chicken glow? And it's just giving it some nice depth. You wanna kind of clean up the shape around the mouth here. Got a little bit messy. So I'm just kind of, I feel like I'm like carving it out, you know, I'm just finding those shapes. That works. Okay. There's a little highlight of like white tone here that I haven't put in, so that's not really going to be white. I'm actually going to use some of that background blue. I think that'll be kind of fun. I'll just drop a little bit of that in there. Yeah. That's going to serve as my white. So this is that teal color that I had in the background. I like to bring the background into the foreground, so sometimes I just drop it in places that I feel like it'll work. Even if I don't really see it there. Same thing here. I do see some little kind of blue highlights on the edge of our chicken here, so that's kind of what I'm picking up on with this, but I just like that extra little texture there. And go in a little closer here. I think I had a little too much magenta wrapping around this part, and I want to be able to see it, so I need to carve that back in. Okay. We're getting there. This is fun. Oh, I didn't do this little block of color. So this is kind of like a grayish periwinkle color. So I'm going to make that using Payne's Gray and white and just a little bit of that alizarin crimson. So those same colors we started with, kind of making like a dark purpley tone. And I'm just going to drop that in. I want it to stay dark so that the bright edge of the chicken will stand out. Just dropping that in. But now, since I don't really have that color anywhere else, I'm going to put some of that color on my chicken too. So I'm going to put some of that into the shadows here. And I kind of like seeing some of these cooler shadows that I haven't really put in yet. So I'm going to use this color for that. So again, it's Payne's Gray, alizarin crimson, and white that I'm using. And I'm just going to put some of these cooler shadows into the bird. I think that was kind of needed. And you know, your warm colors will look warmer when you've got them contrasted by some cool tones. So, I mean, that kind of goes back to the complementary color underpainting theory and why we do it. So, yeah. There we go. Before we wrap this one up, we're just about there. I want to drop some kind of brighter green tones, I think. I've got a lot of contrast here in the photo where it's very white. This is like a window here, and the bird is looking darker, and I don't have that much contrast right here in my painting. So I want to push my background a little bit brighter there. So I'm going to mix up a really bright color, and I think I'm going to do it with white and phthalo green. I'm going to try just those two, and I'm just putting white right on my palette to get a nice clean little area of white. It's going to be mostly white with just a speck of that phthalo green, and I'm going to give this a try and see if this is going to be bright enough for me. Might be good. See how this is just really standing out a lot more? And I'm not going to put it everywhere. I'm just kind of putting in some little bits of it, and I'm kind of changing the direction of my brush strokes. Trying to decide if I want to do any more or not. Sometimes it's like when something's good, you do too much of it and then it's not good anymore, you know? You don't want to do that. I've also thought about maybe making more of a green, but I just don't know. Let's try it. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to this. So now it's going to be a little bit, so it's going to be phthalo green, Hansa yellow, and white. I feel like I want to put a little bit more of like a true green color in here and just drop a bit of this in and see how I like it. I can always take it out if I don't like it, but I just think that'll maybe make these red parts stand out a little bit more. If I just drop a little bit of this true green in there. I think it's fun. This is part of doing a lot of paintings, is you can experiment with your colors and see what combinations you like, what works for you, and what you don't like. I like a lot of contrast, so that's what I do. But I'm afraid I'm going to get a little too carried away, so I'm going to stop with that, I think. And now I'm just going to squint one last time at my painting and see if there's anything else I want to do. And I just realized there is. I want to add some purple shadows in here because we did not put those in, and I think that's going to be really kind of fun. So I'm going to use I'm going to use Permanent Dark Violet and try to find a clean spot on my palette. Permanent Dark Violet, Quinacridone Magenta. And maybe I'll just put those two in first. So that's gonna make a nice warm purple. And I'm gonna drop some of that in. A little bit more Permanent Dark Violet. Yeah, this is gonna give some more contrast here. A little bit more here. So remember when I was talking before about don't be afraid of making your darks dark and your lights light. So pushing these, doing these like final touches where I'm pushing those darks a little bit darker is what is going to make this really pop in the end. So we've got a few little dark areas there. Yeah. So, okay, now I want to add a few little like purpley highlights. Thank you, Judy. Sorry guys, I have not been looking too much at the camera this time. I hope I didn't miss too many comments, but I think you guys have been kind of quiet. Okay, so now I'm going to do Permanent Dark Violet and a little bit of white, which is going to make just some purple tones. And I'm going to drop a little bit of that in there too. And then I think we're going to call this one done. Yeah, I like seeing these little purple tones in here. So these are kind of highlights that I'm doing with the purple. Yeah, that's fun. Okay, I'm gonna stop because I'm afraid I'm gonna do too many of these. So I'm gonna call that done as I continue. Sorry guys. Okay, let's see. It is 6:03, so we're going to call this one done. I'm going to bring in the camera so you can see. Yeah, we have some bad glare. Let's see. Sorry. Trying to get it without the glare. There. Does that help a little bit? That's kind of how it turned out. I'm going to post the completed painting so you can see that too if you're going to do this demo later. But thank you so much for watching this demo. Thank you for joining me. I love it. I always appreciate it when you guys share these demos. It means so much. And it means that a lot more people will get to check them out and try them. So please hit that share button if you've enjoyed this demo. And again, if you want to paint it, you can get the outlines download for just $10 on my website, Allie K Studio. And I will also post that in the comments. So thank you everyone. I hope that you had fun, and I will see you next week, Monday, live at 5 Eastern. And I'm excited to share next week's demo. We're going to paint a pig next week, which will be really fun. And I can't wait to see all of these little farm animal paintings together as a collection, because I know a lot of you are doing all of them and I'm excited to see them. So if you painted this one with me, would you please share it in my group, Allie's Paint Friends. That's a free group that I have here. You guys can find that on my page. But I love seeing them all there, and everyone else that paints along likes to see yours too. So thank you everyone, and you are very welcome. Have a great night and take care.